For the Newsfirst team, I'm Niresh Elyathambi. We are privileged to have with us this evening Mr. Rajeev Amarasuriya, attorney at law, who is the new president-elect of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Welcome, Rajeev, and good evening to you.
Good evening. Nice to be here.
Right. President-elect of the BASL, a very prestigious position in a very prestigious organization. You are one of the youngest or the youngest president of the BASL, I believe.
They say so.
At 47 years, we do have to reveal your age when we say that you are the youngest. And you won by an astounding 73% of the vote at the BASL election. Yes. Wonderful. So it's nice to see the entire legal fraternity behind you, and obviously they will be supportive of whatever measures you take during your term. So tell us, you're taking over the reins of the BASL at a time when there is much scrutiny of our justice system. Partly due to the fact that anti-corruption is one of the big buzzwords of our society now. The NPP and President AKD in particular ran on that platform, and much is expected. So when we talk about anti-corruption, invariably it is the justice system that has to deliver. Of course, corruption affects all of society, and society is part of it. But the courts, the lawyers, the police, the judges, all of it has to really deliver the change. What's your opinion about the future of the legal system in Sri Lanka with these changes which we expect?
Yes, anti-corruption is vital. We need to address this, the systemic corruption in this country, and that has been said for decades. The justice, the judicial system plays a vital, pivotal role in bringing those wrongdoers to justice. So over there, before that, there is law enforcement. So we need to make, like every other system, there is room for improvement. The legal system, the judicial system also is plagued with, we have a backlog of cases. We have, it was reducing at some point, but then again, COVID came 2 years. There were, delays in court proceedings. It has gone up. I think it's over 1 million cases, the Minister of Justice recently mentioned in Parliament. So we need to make, in my view, the system must be more efficient. It must be effective. Efficient meaning proceedings must not take time. The length of those cases, it can't take years and years. And usually we have 2 appeals. You have original court, then you have 2 further appeals, and that takes a considerably long period of time. So those, we have to bring it down. We need to also make the system more effective. If you have, and overall I'm speaking, if someone has done wrong, the probability of he or she being convicted should be high. And that must happen. That must happen quickly. You can't have some wrongdoing, you're remanded, and you're released on bail, and then, 10 years later, you're convicted. It is counterproductive. And we can't blame any particular group or segment. There is also a shortage of resources. The judiciary is the third pillar of democracy. We have the legislature, we have the executive, we have the judiciary. Now, the workings of the judiciary, therefore, as you know, is one of 3, so it's very, very important. My view is that more resources must be invested in the judiciary. A lot of these delays, problems we speak of, and everyone talks about it, are those which were witnessed or which was very many other jurisdictions around. When we speak of Singapore as, this place we want to go, or say Malaysia, In 2016, I was on a delegation from the BASL and we visited both those countries. A small delegation of about 6 or 7 of us. And something which they told us was that, well, all the problems you have today, we had in the 1990s. The delays, the inefficiencies, the backlog, the time, we spend a lot of time in court. I mean, in my view, it should be like a doctor's appointment. You know your time. Maybe you go 15 minutes before. You go for your case, the lawyers, the litigants, all of them. When you finish and come. It must be structured. So what they said was both Singapore and Malaysia. In the 90s, they had this. They, of course, introduced technology in the form of, well, one is case management, systems for managing cases. And there are systems around the world which have been developed quite well. Technology, I'm speaking in the 1990s now, we are way ahead, we are speaking of AI. Technology which helps the process and automation. A lot of the things which sometimes happen at registries are still manually performed.
Now, Rajeev, who should drive this technology? In the sense, we all know that Sri Lanka is far behind now. I'm not sure quite what happened. In the 1990s, we had internet, we had email, and so did the rest of the world. And then from about the turn of the century, Sri Lankan society as a whole simply didn't seem to get on the bandwagon of digitalization. And most systems in most departments and the private sector, I would say, are still manual.
Yes.
So obviously you need somebody to drive this change. And you can't sort of expect the judges or the lawyers to do it. They have their roles. But who should it be? I mean, we have a ministry of, digital economy and so on.
So it is a responsibility of the state. I think one of the reasons probably why this didn't really was not focused on is the lack of resources, investment, and there were maybe at the time our leaders thought of other priorities. But the investment for the long term. However it is, we have got where we are. We are still as a country standing. So there is an urgent need for this digital transformation. And as you said, it's not the legal system, it's everywhere. And I mean, even the private sector, I think in the last few years, they have, got on board a little bit. But when you say technology, we are still speaking of technology maybe 15 years ago. Now people are working on AI. To get to AI, you must start still working on computers. So there is a gap, and every day which passes, the industry is developing. So the state has a huge role. There is a Ministry of Digital Economy. There is a process to digitalize. It must happen. The government sector has to change. And I think the most difficult is the government sector, because sometimes there is a need for upskilling of the members of the government. I mean, they have to learn, they have to be taught. And
but that's actually not as difficult as one imagines.
No, it's not. It's not. And now, when I was secretary between 2020 and 2022, I had to take office in the middle of a lockdown, though I had gone through election before. And then we had to close BSS secretariat. And for 6 weeks or 2 months, there was no office. And we had to convert everything online. And we did the conversion of the education programs. And I remember there were, several senior lawyers said, how do I don't know how to get onto the Zoom. I can give a lecture, but how do I do it? Then I said, no, I will get a junior down. He or she will assist you. And they onboarded. And then within a one or two sessions, they were fully proficient. Technology is very easy to convert to. But I think there's a countrywide, we need a very systemic, a focused effort to convert. We are, in my view, 30 years behind. With the 1990s sector, in Singapore and Malaysia, they converted. Now we're in 2025. That is 35 years.
Yes.
It's a long time.
Absolutely.
So that's like a career of somebody. So we have to focus. The state needs to find the resources. And I say, if you don't, we don't need to find it always aid for everything. This is a vital sector. And the benefits of it will be seen in the form of development. If our judicial sector, the system of administration of justice is efficient and effective, then this problem of finding investment also and other one reason why investors don't come, among others, is that one is there is no consistent policies. It changes. Our legal system is also not the best in the world, which, investors want to come in, put their money, make profit and go out, and we must appreciate that.
And if there are any legal issues, they want them resolved
quickly. It's not about, spending years in court. They want resolution. Sometimes I have seen corporates, even if they have to lose a case, they would probably prefer that and take it off the balance sheet than have it pending as some contingent liability. And have seen, and they say that that's how business works. So it's an investment. You may not see the return overnight, like build a road or put up a building, but these are the investments we need for our country. And the justice sector, definitely, state must take that responsibility. They need to find the funds. We may have to cut funds from somewhere else, even if we don't have adequate, but bring it into this sector. Also across the other sectors also, it is vital.
Right. Now, you mentioned that we are about 30 years behind, but that doesn't mean it's going to take 30 years to get there. Within a year or two, we can transform, digitalize, and then reap the benefits of that.
Yes. You saw what happened during COVID. All of the service providers, the food providers converted online within days.
Absolutely. And there were magistrates who
the courts operating. In fact, we had virtual courts. We had, people found ways and means, whether it's from WhatsApp groups to something beyond. It is possible. So there must be focus. The stakeholders must take ownership. The state must have ownership of getting it done. Our sector, the judges also must understand, and they do appreciate that this helps the system to make our lives much better, easier, because sometimes to get proceedings, sometimes you're doing a case, you need to get some proceedings, you might have to wait. But if you have access to it, for example, in other countries, you can apply online. You pay by the credit card and it comes to you by email. You don't have to go and spend time at a registry. And that is now. If you wait another 10 years, it will be something more advanced in those countries. So we are behind. So we have to get to that sooner than later. And I say not 10 years, like you said, it must be a year, 2, 3 years. We have to achieve that. And it's not, this conversion is not, and it's not, there is no reinventing a wheel, where most jurisdictions around the world have now onboarded technology, and they're working now. Someone is speaking to me recently about the system in Fiji. Now, Fiji is a country where, say, if you fall sick, you'll be worried because you don't have the best of healthcare. But their court system is completely, from what I hear, automated, and then they have the systems in place, and they've invested.
I think there are a large number of Sri Lankan lawyers and judges who are practicing in Fiji.
So our resources have gone and probably supported that initiative. So what I mean is, we have to. It's something which is an investment, and also it's in the public interest, because the public, end of the day, our legal system, judicial system, to some extent, is a support system or support service for the country's development. We have to support that. So disputes must be resolved effectively and efficiently. And when I say efficiently, that doesn't mean you have to throw out the cases. You have to hear the cases. You have to, the judges must have time to, go into the matter, decide the issue. So to supplement that, we need to also increase the number of courts, the more judges. The Attorney General's Department needs to be provided resources. And I think the Minister had mentioned recently in Parliament that several senior officers are retiring. So we need to have more. Sometimes I walked into those chambers of, colleagues in the Attorney General, and I've seen their tables and they are stacked with files. So they are overworked. So resources must be supplied. Even the law enforcement, the police. Law enforcement is now not about numbers of officers, but the intelligence, the technology, the systems. Some of those are still manual. Where we said, even the police stations, they record statement. It's still manual. That takes time. So a lot of investment is needed. As much as this government also speaks, saying, well, rule of law is one of the foundations of the mandate. So we need to support that, and rule of law means you need to facilitate your various stakeholders to be able to achieve that. They just words without meaning.
Now, Rajeev, it strikes me that in a country where we have spent billions and hundreds of billions on these wonderful buildings for the government, I mean, government, provincial councils, and so on, all over the country, you see these magnificent buildings. I mean, you see the defense headquarters and so on. Amazing places, quite modern. But when you walk into a courtroom, a typical courtroom, a courthouse in Sri Lanka, you're likely walking into a 100-year-old building, or something which simply hasn't been modernized much. And this is where you said that we need investment in infrastructure. Do you feel that the justice system has been neglected in this area?
Well, I wouldn't be strong to use the word neglected, but the focus of investment, of spending state funds have been at, in different other priority areas, maybe different views of different governments. Of course, we have older courts, but we have new court complexes. You can't find fault with the ministry for that. There are new courts, and whenever there is, many courts have opened afresh. Sometimes the older courts are more comfortable than the new ones, but then you're going up. And as you know, the concrete structures, the older ones, they may not look so impressive, but comfort-wise, it may be better. But there is what I was trying to drive is that there has to be more. There has been investment, there are allocations, there are facilities provided, but there must be more. And we need to have transformational change. Year by year, if you go on for we can go on for another 50 years, and we will not see the change we ought to see. And then you must, 1 year you might have to spend a little bit more on this sector. But this, in my view, this sector will reap more benefit than many other sectors, because you will suddenly have a very efficient, effective justice system, which is vital for a developing country like us. We cannot go on like this. We have now gone on for 70 odd years. Everyone blames everyone else. I mean, we must all take ownership. And everyone, because we are the ones who are going to benefit from a better country, and this sector has to be improved, and then you will have your investments flowing in. You will have, dispute resolution. I mean, now land cases sometimes take a long time to resolve, because you have three levels of adjudication. You have the original court, you have the civil appeal court, and the Supreme Court. And apart from the dislocation to the parties, if a subject of land, say, takes a certain number of years, no one is taking economic benefit from that land. You're not sure.
Absolutely.
So that is also...
Banks won't touch it.
Banks won't touch it. I mean, neither party will develop it. And
exactly.
If you look at it, land is a limited resource. We have to maximize that. And that means that number of years, this productive asset, or whatever we can call it, productive asset, is not made use of. I mean, maybe somebody will use it, but you will not develop it. So that is, end of the day, then we say we don't have development.
Right.
I mean, it's just one example.
Yes.
I mean, you can't blame all of this. I mean, our sector is just one part of this entire picture. But what I'm saying is we need to also speed up the process. And that is not you. I mean, if you go to a courthouse, you will see a judge usually comes onto the bench, say to a district court. By about 9:30, you can go on till 3, 4. And maybe with a break in the middle. So the judges are working very hard. They have to deliver, it's not an easy role as a judge. So you can't expect a judge to do more than that. So you have to obviously have then new courthouses have to open. You need to have more judges appointed. And then you have, the work will probably move faster.
Now, it's interesting when you say that we need more judges, because we certainly have a large number of lawyers in this country. So is there any difficulty in finding more judges?
So there you can find judges, but you have to have a cadre of judges increased. And that's about resources being allocated. So you have to, of course, create new courthouses. The ones you can have maybe additional, say 2 district courts as opposed to 1. And so that's a matter for the state to do.
Right. And let's talk about legal education, starting with the LLB programs in the universities, law college, and further. Again, are we lagging behind?
So if you look at our legal education, there was a time when our legal education was world class, and we must be proud of that. But over the years, the numbers who come in, the students who come into this legal education, whether it's the law faculties or the law college, have increased in large numbers. The law faculty maybe in the 70s would have had 15, 20. During my time, we had 200, and I think now we have about 350 coming in a batch. So again, we go back to this issue of resources. Every year, I was on the council of the University of Colombo, and every year you see that, there is a request by the government to increase the number of the intake of students to all faculties. So if it's 301 years, we'll make it 350. It's a populist. It's good to number, but parallelly, the resources are not increased. So you have the same number of lecturers, the same size classroom, and so on. So we need to, again, going back, there must be investment. We must look at our curricula. The syllabuses must change. We have to benchmark nothing less than world class. And we need to look at, and then also we have generally, a lot of all these courses are producing lawyers who are, educated generally across all the subjects. Maybe it's a time to start, those who are interested at least, to have specialization. There may be law students who don't want to practice at all, and they have decided that early. Then they might say, well, I want to specialize in human resources. It's human resources. It's if you look at a lot of the human resources heads, even at present, a lot of them are lawyers with a lot of labor related issues. So you might have that, as an additional, maybe another year or a special subject line. So we need to think like that. We need to produce lawyers. I mean, a large number comes out, but I think you have more specialization, more training. For court practice, skills like, advocacy, negotiation, communication skills, soft skills, all of that we need to, introduce at the beginning. From year 1, year 2, year 3, the values. We speak of values. There are allegations, there are ethical issues. The values, my view is that it's a problem across society. It's not.
Absolutely.
Somewhere down the line, Sri Lankan society, we have gone down the wrong path on values. And that is something you must correct from home, from your maybe place of worship, from your school. And then by the time you come to university, all of those should be, to understand what is right and wrong. And sometimes it's, you see that, it's not the fault of the person, but the whole background, the way you have been brought up, you can't see the difference. You say, well, no, this is, well, sometimes I have seen that when I say, you can't do this, but no, why can't you do this? What's wrong with this? So that has to be instilled. And easier said than done, but we need to, and then then the legal education must take on from there. Those who opt to go into the legal field and provide more opportunities and have them fully rounded by the time they come out. Because presently there is there's a 6 months apprenticeship program, and there are 10 mandatory programs you have to sit for. I don't believe that in 6 months and with 10 programs you can change someone a lot. So you have to provide this down the line. And by the time you finish your education, now, for example, in England, you have this vocational program.
Right.
I think a year or two, you have to follow it before you become a barrister. Now you can't. Kids also they come with a lot of economic difficulties. You can't delay the entry into the profession. So all of that which is given later, we need to give before.
Right.
And ensure that you are ready. It's easy to say, well, you stay another year, but then that's not fair. We know, and I involved in the university, sometimes you have this Mahapura disbursement. You won't believe there are so many students who send half of it home. It's given, I think, 5,000 or 6,000. It's given for the student, but they sometimes send it back to their homes. So we must understand the social context also. So those are changes we need to look at.
What about more specialized areas now, such as arbitration, shipping, environmental? Now we saw in the case of the Express Pearl disaster, our justice system seemed to be found wanting, because in the end, I mean, we can argue about whose fault it was and who didn't do their job, but it's still up in the air. And we, as a country, we were expecting billions of dollars in compensation, but now, it's sort of gone nowhere. Shouldn't there have been perhaps a bit more expertise in the country where we could have had a sharper focus on things like this?
Yeah, I think we had the expertise, but we need to, the system must create experts in these areas. And
yes.
Right, this environment. We are looking at a financial center. Then we are looking, foreign law is coming, but we must also train our lawyers. We must be futuristic. Now, for example, from what I understand, the medical profession, and when they look at specialization, that second stage, they see how many vacancies and opportunities are there and they fit it in. So as a profession, we have to now look at, not now, 5, 10, 15 years ahead. In 10 years, where would Sri Lanka be? Would we have our financial center functioning? Would it actually work? Then we must now produce those lawyers who in 5, 6 years would be properly skilled. Maybe look at investing, let them go abroad, do some advanced studies and create that pool. Similarly, in other areas, which say environment, alternate dispute resolution. We also, some of these areas are so specialized that it's just a few lawyers who are, now say, Admiralty matters, maritime disputes. There are few lawyers who are specialized, but that knowledge we need to now broad-based. So that there's, in my view, this must be a profession where those on merit, it is on merit, and you can, work, and if you want to, it's not on connections or it's someone it should be. We have very, very smart young kids who come out. I mean, with this, to get to law college, you have to go through entrance exam, maybe 7,000, 8,000 or 10,000, and you have 200 or 300. The law faculty, you have to have very, very high Z score, sometimes 3 years. So you are very, very smart when you come in. Then we must now take the fullest their talent. And we have a very good, especially over this election also, I had the opportunity of traveling around the country. We have some very good youngsters, and I was actually very pleasantly pleased and their even their ideology, the way their principles, very good. So we have a young generation of lawyers who can be invested in and who must be given that opportunity. And I'm confident that even the legal profession, we will have a good pool who can take this profession forward.
Right. And then what about soft skills? Because that's the area, when you talk to educators in any field, they say that, well, you need subject knowledge, but you also need soft skills in order to optimize, especially your career opportunities. Is this an area which needs more focus?
Very much so. I think our education system across the board does not give enough focus to soft skills. From school, you have from your debate, those are the conventional soft skills, debating or whatever, mooting later on. That is something which I think, especially in the Asian region, except maybe India, which has a different focus and the soft skills are, they are very assertive. Something where we have fallen back, or maybe culturally also. So that there must be focus, and I think, out of learning, maybe 40 or 50% should be soft skills also. Because what you learn, you need to be able to present, you need to take forward, you need to make use of. And it's also about opportunities. It's not about just training. You must have, given opportunity, whether it's speak or whether it's debate or whether it's to go and organize something. Those those extracurricular activities we spoke of in school, we must encourage students, whether it's sports for leadership, organization somewhere else. Those are things we need to focus on, and in our certainly in our legal profession, advocacy, that is vital, and that's something we have not given too much focus. It's basically on the run. You learn from either your senior or you watch other lawyers in court and you pick it up. But in other countries, there's training, there's specialized training, and those are you have to go through it to come out. So even though we don't make it mandatory, we need to, and I believe that the virtual mode is available to us. We have lawyers or even law school lawyers across the country, from Point Pedro to Dondra. We have east to west. So physically it may be difficult to roll it out effectively, but virtually we must use those channels, and that we must do.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you spoke about Point Pedro to Dondra. What about justice in the provinces? Now, as with everything else, Colombo is the focus far too much indeed, whether it comes to education or whatever. But also now with Hulsdorf being where it is that a drawback in obtaining justice out in the provinces?
I wouldn't think that. We have a decentralized system of courts. We have, the district courts, we have the provincial high courts, we have the appellate courts. And only two courts which are not devolved, which are in Colombo, the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court.
Right.
The system runs quite well. Some of the problems we have in Colombo, we do not see in the smaller courts. Now, for example, the delays, the issues of registry, difficulty, say, to get proceedings, all of that, some places don't have. With their smaller courts, smaller registries, and courts, it's happening faster. So it's about the volume. So I don't see a problem like that, because you see dispute resolution in your closest court and original court. The appeals, of course, should come to Colombo. There are discussions on whether you should have some level decentralization of that also. Fundamental rights, for example, is in the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Whether it should be in the Supreme Court or it should be at a lower forum.
With FR, it's a drawback, isn't it? Because if you have an issue out in Hambantota or Mullaitivu, the litigants have to come to Colombo.
I mean, there are views on both sides.
Right.
Now, for example, in larger countries like India, you will have it slightly decentralized, but size of Sri Lanka is sometimes smaller than even a state in India. So to that extent, you might have to travel a couple 100 kilometers, but maybe we need to look at that also, whether it can. I mean, that's of course for the state and for the community to work out. But access to justice is vital. At the end of the day, we are all serving the citizen to resolve their disputes. That's what the legal system is about.
Absolutely.
So end of the day, the citizen is the most vital element in this whole bigger picture which we speak of.
Right. Now the BASL over the past several years, where Sri Lankan society was basically turned upside down. I'm talking about COVID, the Aragalia, the economic debacle, and so on. The BASL was somewhat of a calming influence. It stood up for the people. It stood up for justice, and it worked or facilitated solutions. And where the other arms of government seemed to be breaking down, the justice system did prevail, and the BASL played a huge role in this, in my opinion. And of course, now we have, as a nation, moved forward with 2 elections, a new government, a new parliament, and so on. and a third election coming up, where we'll get all new local government bodies. So we've hopefully moved forward. What do you see the BASL's role in the future in facilitation of social change? And supporting the government in changes.
The advantage the BASL has among all of these other institutions is that the BASL is independent. Our lawyers are independent professionals, especially the private bar, and we are not answerable to anyone beyond. So that's the strength we have. So that strength gives us the opportunity to decide right from wrong, and we can make principle-based choices because we are not subject to any other influence. So during the Aragali also, of course, there were two sides. There were the lawyers who appeared in those cases they went as lawyers, as private lawyers.
Right.
But the BASL also, with the issuance of statements, cautionary notices and so on, provided the necessary support, again pinned down to the rule of law, because it was a crisis, it was an economic crisis, it was a social crisis, but ultimately all of that had an impact on the rule of law, and we saw that. We saw that there were problems on the ground and that had to also be addressed. So that is how the BASL got involved. It came within the scope and ambit of the wider objects of the Bar Association. For social change, I mean, lawyers in any country have been, pivot, a lot of change around the world, even whether it's South Africa, whether it's, lawyers have been there, and the lawyers have played a vital role because of that attribute of independence, ability to, understand some of these more complex legal, social issues. And the BASL will always stand on a principle, take stands on principle basis. The BASL will always, if something, we must have the conviction and courage. If something is right, to say that also. It's not always to criticize. But equally, if something is wrong, something is going wrong, there's a potential of, something happening, then we must be strong and we must be quick. Sometimes, before it becomes a bigger issue. And actually, the state also should appreciate that type of influence, that type of view or opinion, or coming out, but then you can also align. Now, for example, during the economic crisis, at the beginning, that was during the tail end of my tenure as secretary, and we felt that Mr. Sadia Peiris was president, I was secretary, and we felt that the going was not so good from the economic point of view. We were obviously having the reserves coming down. We had not, sought any alternate plans or support, anything. And when we brought it up, initially, even the EXCO was a little concerned as to whether we were going outside our mandate, with economic crisis or not. But then, we discussed, deliberated it in depth, and we said, economic crisis gives rise to an issue of rule of law.
Absolutely.
If you say there are run on the banks, or you can't pull out your money, people can't convert, there's hyperinflation, then that results in a breakdown in law and order. So that is why we intervened. And in fact, that statement which was issued, which went under my signature as secretary. So that is how we intervene. So, I mean, if there is a need to intervene, if there's a need to say something, we will certainly say that. And it can take different forms. It could be, if it's something, you can even, you can give a telephone call and say. If it's something, you can send a letter. If there is no, or that we must issue a statement, and the public also must be informed. Because sometimes, what we say is not, if it's not accepted, we need to ensure that we have done the right thing. And then, of course, we have, our objects permit. We can go into court. We can seek other interventions, provided, of course, there's consensus on our side that we need to go down that path. So certainly, we will support whatever good change, social change, economic-wise, as a country. But certainly if we feel that there is an issue, there's a violation of the constitution, there's rule of law, equality, then we will certainly not shy away, and we will certainly speak what we have to speak. There's absolutely no, it's unconditional.
Right. And I must make the observation that in this pivotal time, this crucial time from 2020 to 2022, you were the secretary of the BASL. So you played a very crucial role with the committee and guiding the entire legal fraternity. Now, one final question. Some of the institutions of justice in Sri Lanka, such as the Siabok, the AG's department, clearly need a lot more strengthening. And this government has, in fact, said so. What's your opinion on this? Because AG's department, I believe, is completely swamped with the number of cases and a lack of personnel. While Siabok, after whatever, nearly 30 years, it has not lived up to the expectations. I remember when Siabok was originally launched, it was the brainchild of Professor G.L. Piris, and much was expected from it. But it never, over this 30-year period, it didn't live up to expectations. How do we transform these institutions?
So I think there are two aspects which, from what I see, one is, of course, adequate resources, which we spoke of, and that's something we need to ensure. Siabok, the 1994 Act, was a good piece of legislation. It should have brought about the results which was intended to. But for whatever reason, it didn't. There were prosecutions, but I think there were prosecutions of middle and lower ranking of officers. But what is needed is you need to also have the higher officers, higher people who are known to be, if they have done, to be prosecutors, that there is a signal to society. If you do this, this is what happens, these are the consequences. And the new act is very good. There may be some need for tweaking and amendments as we go along, but it's an independent commission. Both the AG's department and the Siabok, we need to ensure that there's independence, and also there must be belief that, well, this independence will not be taken away. Now, if you take the 17th to 21st amendments to our constitution, diametrically opposite positions were taken. We had commissions, independent commissions, constitutional council appointed. Then, a few years down the line, new change of government, parliament takes control, moves back. So, as of now, yes, they are independent. But the 21st amendment can become a 22nd amendment. So, we need to also entrench some of this corruption related, the laws or the provisions, and make it entrenched, make it difficult to change. And we saw that across this period, and then the new appointments were made from the 17th to 21st amendments. And each time you have the 17th, 19th, 21st, everyone is happy. That is those who are, public spirited people. And then the other two amendments are different. So you need to, whilst you have independence in the present, we also need to bring in measures to ensure that a new government or a new way of thinking will not change it.
Will not roll it back.
Roll it back, and the danger in that is then the players in those systems are worried about that change.
Right.
Then you get into bigger trouble. Individually. So that we must, now the court system, there is, it's independent, and you have security of tenure and all of that. So we need to drive that in also to especially the Siabok, and give assurance. It has to be done legally, because what happens is you have a new government coming in 4 or 5 years, and they come with a different mandate. The manifesto says we will abolish the Siabok, and you win 65% and come. What do you do? So it must be something which governments can't change, and that is when there is some talk of a new constitution. Maybe have entrenched provisions And these are institutions like the courts. Government can't come and close down a court. It's to a certain extent not intense in that way, but those are things you won't change. So this system should not change. The office bearers should have the security of tenure. They should be protected thereafter, and that comfort must be provided. And once that is there, and I'm sure that I'm not casting any aspersions, and I'm sure that is something. But going forward also, we must ensure that we can't have a reversal of this law. We can't have a reversal. We must go forward, not backwards. So even the ages department, essentially resources must be provided.
Right.
New officers must be recruited. They must be provided adequate. There's case management technology for even lawyers, for departments such as the ages department. That must be invested in, make life easier.
So it's interesting you talk about case management technology, but at the same time, if you walk into most government departments, including the AGs, you just have a whole heap of files on everybody's table.
It is not, ideally, it won't happen in the next few years, but ideally we should all walk into court with an iPad, with a tab. And when we say page number 1052, the judge, the opposing counsel, all must have that. But now what happens is sometimes it's manually. So when I say 1052, sometimes the brief for the judges, because it's manually done, it may be a different number. So, and this is not something I'm saying which is not there. It's there in many countries. That's how it happens. So this is this transformation. We are not the experts, the lawyers or the judges there are specialists in in technology, the experts. They have to come and provide that, and these systems are available. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's not it's not rocket science. It's operational. So it's about, and we had a very good committee chaired by Mr. Navin Marapana during when Mr. Ali Sabri was the Minister of Justice, and they were, I think, about 70-80% completed. Then everything was ready, but there was some change in administration, change of the ministers, and it didn't reach fruition. So this is essential, and I don't think as I said, I'm saying this, we are 30 years behind. Let us not be another 30 years behind and speak later. So let us
I certainly hope not. One final question. The concept of an independent public prosecutor was mooted by many political parties, both those who are in the opposition now and the ruling NPP. What about this idea? Would you and the BASL?
Yes.
What is the stance?
The last Bar Council meeting it was brought up. In fact, as I proposed that we have a committee of the Bar Association to look into this proposal. It's still just a concept. It must be fleshed out into how it's going to be done. There are different ways of having a office of the independent public prosecutor. It could be under the AG department, it could be a different department. We don't know all of that. And there is a committee, I think, under the Ministry of Justice also. So the BASL committee, the BASL position will be formulated through this committee, which will also seek views of the membership. And then we are still, we need a little bit more time. But generally, the issue is that the Attorney General has a dual role. One as the legal advisor to the state, and that involves, advising on various matters on law and legal advice, whether it's contracts, whether it's tenders, whether it's recruitment, whether it's negotiation with foreign countries and so on. The other role is to prosecute, and the issue is that there can be perceived conflict of interest to the extent that you might take the example of you advise a minister, and then you might prosecute that same minister or public official, and to that extent whether you can whether there is whether the prosecution is independent. It's not. I don't think it's coming as any particular allegation against the Justice Department, but there are many countries outside, even in England, in places where these functions are separated. So there is merit in what is being said, we had in the 70s, we had a DPP, and that is under the Attorney General's department.
Right.
So whether the government is looking at it being within the department or whether it's a separate department. The separate department would also mean that you have to, like the Seabok, you have to now set up a different department, and whether you can attract. Now the Attorney General's department, however, attracts good talent, and that has been the case right along. So, so all of that will have to be considered. And BSL certainly, we look at it, I mean, we'll have a positive attitude towards it, but of course we need to also work it internally and come to a position of what our position is. And that will be dependent on what proposal which is presented to us.
Right. Well, the sooner that is done, the better, in my humble opinion. And I'm afraid we are now out of time. It's been a fascinating discussion. Mr. Rajeev Amarasuriya, President-elect of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Pleasure.
And thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news is coming up next. Have a great evening.